It is August 28, 2024, and this is the Career Technical and Education Committee meeting. I will call this meeting to order. First agenda item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Can I get a second? Get somebody a second, yeah. All those in favor of approving the agenda say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Abstentions, motion passes. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
I have a second. Any discussion, no further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Abstention, motion passes. Approve the minutes at 5:30. Just just gonna go back. Motion, second. No discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. All opposed say no. Abstention, motion passes. For folks at home, if anyone's streaming, Robert's Rules of Order, right? Like we gotta do that. Thank you all for attending this August CTE committee meeting, and I will pass it out to Brett, who CTE does not stop in the summer, right?
Never stops.
Yeah.
Never stops. Thank you. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. What I wanted to do was give you a little bit of a share out of our summer. It was a busy one, and tell you what we're planning for programming and some other issues, budget and staffing and things going forward. So this summer we had 2 different grants that funded programs at 4 sites. We had 38 students at PCTA and newcomers, and we did a combined, which I love, carpentry and HVAC program, and then we did an automotive program. So we had 38 students there. They did 150 hours in those 2 programs. We had, at the last minute, we got a grant, and we had 26 students at CCRI, and they took classes in CNA. That was planned previously. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that program. And then at the Liston campus, we had a machining program and a pharmacy tech program. So all of these, in my mind, are proof of concept programs. What do kids respond to? What does 150 hours of interaction yield for a kid? How do we get kids exposed to careers and programs, some of which we don't have as programs in the Providence Public Schools. I would say that the CNA program at Rhode Island Nursing Education Center was our most successful workforce development program. It was the 2nd year we ran this program. We learned a lot from last year. The kids have been extremely dedicated. They started in June in evening sessions after school. They went for the entire month of July and August. This week, they're doing 35 hours of clinical at a nursing home. So they're busing from the Rhode Island Nursing Center. And at the end of September, they come from 3 different schools. At the end of September, they will be eligible to take the practical and the written exam for CNA. Last summer, we ran a program. We only had 1 student get the state license, and that was disappointing, but a lot of it was because I think we didn't start the kids early enough, and we put them in a college level course with 6 weeks as opposed to 16, which is what the hospitals usually do. So we learned a lot, and I think this year we're going to have a much higher success rate. We had another 12 students in cohort 3 go through the firefighter program at Central. That went extremely well. We had a really good ceremony at the end of June with the first 2 cohorts, and the 3rd cohort was invited. So we're building kind of a family of kids that want to go into the firefighting pipeline. We have 1 student who has earned his state EMT license, and the chief is working with a group of students on a fast track to try to get at least 1, if not 2, of our alumni from that program into the fire department during this school year. It's a long trajectory, but I do want to remind people that the trajectory for unions is long. It's not an automatic out of high school into the carpenters union, into the laborers union. So, we all have to remember that it's going to take some time to build this pipeline in the Providence Fire Department. And we also had 12 students from Hope who did an internship in the building, and they prepared and laid out the entire ninth grade orientation program. So that was exciting for them to do that for their high school. We had students placed at the Future Generation of Cancer Scholars program, which is a 2-summer commitment. So cohort 2 finished their second summer, cohort 1 finished their first summer. I just wrote a letter of support to keep that funding going. That's been an amazing opportunity with Lifespan. And the doctor who runs it, Dr. Safran, is committed to staying with kids long-term, trying to find them colleges where they can study medicine. And if they decide to go on to med school, he wants to be part of that, and he's really committed to this effort. And then we also had 5 students from welding and auto, all from PCTA, who did full co-op internship programs at Electric Boat in Quonset this summer. And 4 of them are going to go back for a co-op this year, so it's also very successful. So it's been a really great summer for us. So I want to pause and just see if you have questions about what we did this summer, why, or anything that you heard.
I have to observe some of the classes and they look amazing.
Seems like a long time ago. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments of the whole summer was when I walked into carpentry and the task was that they just had materials they had to use. They had a pallet project, but it was very student driven. So they went out and did research and they made this a tiki bar type thing, and then it was because
Called it a smoothie bar.
Right, it was so
when the mayor got there, I was like,
Exactly.
this is the smoothie bar.
Yeah, it was and then with
Yeah,
HVAC
it was a
getting
smoothie
involved,
bar.
they
It
were
was
able
really great.
to clad the whole thing and use the sheet metal bedding. But what was great about it was how it was very different than some of the other project because the kids were able to talk. They were super excited showing the individual parts that they had figured out. So they were excited.
Well, and I explained to him when he came, that was a great project. I mean,
Yep.
all the materials were from pallets that would have been in the dumpster in discarded. So they went out and built that and sanded it. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
They
there's a lot of
had
product
they had
for the kids.
electric, they had lights to it, they had a tap to it.
Yeah.
It's really intricate.
Yes, it was great.
What are they gonna do?
That I never got to ask.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do
I
that.
think
Yeah,
Alex
I'm
was
sure
thinking
they probably
one
drew
of the-
straws
one
and
of the
something
kids
took
was-
it home. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a great backyard. It would be great in the backyard.
Yeah,
It was really well done. But it's nice to see that integration of, I mean, they did a little electrical, but
Mhm.
also the irrigation, the HVAC and the plumbing together. It wasn't like we're gonna do HVAC this week and plumbing, and carpentry the next week. It was all integrated.
Are they able to turn their projects into profit, actually sell?
They made several Adirondack chairs that are gonna be sold at Waterfire. And this summer, they're one of
And
them.
they had baby ones.
They had kids.
Yeah, the little ones are so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They have the kid-sized ones, and then they made, I forget the name of the game, but they made something like foosball, but it's a hockey, but stick thing.
Oh, yeah.
And they made one for each elementary school. So wherever the school wants to set it up, you take a stick and you just try to score or whatever. It's a fun game, I can't remember the name. It's like cornhole, something like that they made for every single elementary school. But they will be able to sell the chairs at Waterfire. So summer was good. I don't know what the funding will look like next summer. So we're gonna just see. I hope that the one Providence grant that we got from the city, we were able to direct all of the funds that we received because we have our own staff. We were able to fund the teachers through the ESSER and the other funding. So all the One Providence money went to student stipends, and that matters a lot, right? You can't ask kids to go to class for 6-7 hours a day and work all summer, so it helps them with that choice. So we'll continue to look for funding sources to make sure that students have those opportunities. And that was the whole write-up of the whole narrative was about work-based, workforce development instead of jobs, right? That's the choice that kids have to make, and we have to stipend them. So we will be looking for more creative ways to fundraise to make sure we keep that going.
Who could be an interesting corporate partner, Citizens, from what I've heard, is really interested in like workforce development type program. So maybe there's a way to partner because
Yeah.
it meets a lot of their goals in terms of the student population that you have. And, you know, as we look back past this legislative year, there's been a big investment in citizens from Providence. So I think there's an opportunity for citizens to help
Yeah.
give back and return favor. But yeah, I think there's a lot of synergy, especially if you're looking for partners for next summer.
I'm wondering if we could, if I'm always thinking, just trying to think about marketing, is there a way the graphics department could put together a catalog of some of the things that they made? Like those chairs, they were like I don't want the baby ones, I wanted the big ones. They are absolutely stunning. If we had like a catalog here, you know, and put them over here, even out in the public, people would, and people love to purchase things that are made by students. You know, so I think there's a marketing option too, where kids can actually recoup and see, and then put it back into the program, and then that's a way for them to at least get their stipend every year too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those things they're beautiful. I mean, if the tiki bars, anything like those chairs,
Yes. No, it's absolutely
really great work, and it's really, I mean, I think it's very marketable.
the houses that they made for the Rhode Island Home Show would sell. They were I don't know if you saw the announcements about it, but the organization that sponsors it they want to provide a playhouse for a young person in the state who's dealing with a very serious illness. So they come to the schools and they give the schools a budget for supplies, and they tell the school what the theme should be. So for PCTA, the young girl wanted Peppa Pig. That was it, literally. They built, and I'll send you pictures for the home show, the most beautiful playhouse for her backyard. And her whole family came to it. I mean, it was a very emotional day, I think, for the kids to see her and her siblings walk into this house, and like I'm tearing up thinking about it, you know, like and every school that has a carpentry program built a house based on the theme. There was one with ice cream, and there was a castle, and ours was definitely the best. But you know, like and they put Peppa Pig things on the wall. You know, they researched Peppa Pig, and you know, they bought a little Peppa Pig, and they outfitted the thing. And I mean, it was just beautiful. But something like that, if you were to buy it, would have been $3,000 or $4,000, you know, if not more. I mean, it was just gorgeous. I think Brian's pulling up a photo. I have photos.
I love Peppa
This
Pig.
was the beginning of the tiki bar. It completely changed. I was just the first. Because they added like on the top, like a food, we even discussed food safety, like what materials to use, you know, to keep it clean and safe.
Yeah, this is so there was the
Those actually-
graphics did a bunch of work inside, like the windows. There's another one that's a candy house. Themes. No, it's not ours. But yeah, there were. But we were actually talking about that today, and just always improving. So we were asked to do 2 more, and it was great seeing the kids from the summertime. I'm talking about all the things that they did in the summer that they can transfer to improve the next 2 projects as well.
That's amazing. So, so moving on to SY20, unless there's anything else, moving on to SY25 programming. I think that the biggest news, and I have a slideshow that I can share with all of you, is that PCTA and newcomer for CTE programming are going to become integrated this year instead of having separate programs. What that looks like is the sophomores are taking their own courses separate. And then as students get into the second year of newcomers, or the third year as juniors or seniors, they will join one of the 11 programs. So instead of being restricted to programs that newcomer has a CTE teacher for, all 11 programs are open. So it's going to be great. It's going to be challenging because some of the kids are coming into programs they have no experience in. They might be walking into Auto 4, and last year they were in carpentry. So like anything, like every challenge in education, there will be hiccups along the way. I think what's exciting is that several of the programs have embraced the challenge as an opportunity for their seniors to teach people skills, to teach the newer rookies in the program the skills. And like that's how we learn things much better. You're an electrical and you're a junior and someone walks in the door who's never done anything and you're teaching them wiring or you're teaching them how to work on a brake system. So that is, again, it's exciting, but it will be challenging for the programs to figure out how to differentiate. There will be bilingual TAs supporting kids, pushing into the classes, but can speak many languages. So there will be, again, translation issues. Safety will always be first in our programs as we integrate the two schools into one. Academically, they will be very separate, but in terms of CTE. So I think what the most exciting part is that students have access to all 11 programs. So that's what's sort of new at PCTA and newcomers. This year, district-wide, we're going to have, and it's scary to say, we have 27 different programs in practice across the district. So that's amazing. But we also, I think, to item number 4.3, we have to think about where we are as a district and what our capacity is. So, every time we see another program or we think about, wind energy or, new developments, it's like we are sort of at a maximum of what we can sustain for 4-year programming. And I am looking for ways to offer kind of fast track workforce development, non-CTE, CTE, I don't know what to call it, opportunities, because there are students, from an equity perspective that don't get into one of our programs and need that. They may not even want it until senior year, and suddenly, they want to know what the options are career-wise, and they haven't been in a CTE program. So I'm very mindful of that need in our district. But I'm also just flagging for everyone that 27 programs is a lot. Some are very low maintenance and low supply needs, and some are extremely expensive and intense. And Nicole, I'm really glad that you're here because, the access to seats and the equitable access to seats is something that, you and I have had a conversation, but it's going to be more of a conversation when a seat opens up. Who gets that seat? If a kid is no longer interested and is sitting in a seat, how do we move that student out and bring someone in without disrupting that student's sense of community in a school and that student's, knowing the teachers and their friends? And, there's a lot of very real issues that we're going to grapple with as we try to increase access to CTE. But 27 programs is a lot, and we've lost our ESSER funding, so we are really limited by our Perkins and our categorical funds, and we can't tap into outside sources, and believe me, we're trying. But I just want to say that our priorities for the school year.
What's the budget gap in terms of losing the ESSER funds?
So the ESSER funds were a little bit, well, they were kind of fluid, like on demand. I would say over the last 3 years, we spent probably $500,000-$600,000 on different, summer staff. We had 2 internship coordinators that we no longer have. So in total, I think I spent quite a bit of money. It allowed us to do things like Vote for Next Gen, where Electric Vote said, if you can get kids here 6 times to New England Tech and Westerly, we can do this trade exposure. It allowed us to have, more internships, not just the funding for the internships, of people reaching out to the businesses. And so I would say, going forward, if we were kind of steady state, it would be $200,000 to $250,000 a year of funds that we were able to tap into. More field trips, more adventures, things like that. So I don't know what the state, funding will look like. I think the issue is going to be exacerbated by the fact that I think we have 100% more CTE programs. We keep hearing that statistic in our board. I think it's 100% more than 15 years ago, right? So the whole pie, the whole Perkins pie is getting split, more. And then the categorical funds are state funds, and those are going to be squeezed. So we have to look for free opportunities, instead of internships, so let's just say, like, my priority for this school year, is to do more pipeline work as opposed to internships. So first example, which I'm really proud of, we just signed an MOU with Providence Water. And it's specific to 3 programs at PCTA. And we have touch points, not gonna cost us anything, but Providence Water is gonna come to us. We're gonna go to Providence Water, and then we're gonna have a mini career matching mini fair in May and try to get 2 or 3 spots every year where, graduates of PCTA from HVAC or electrical or carpentry are going directly to Providence Water. Can we rinse and repeat that with, my goal is 9 other partners this year, right? Johnson Controls, we signed an MOU with Johnson Controls, they're hiring, that's another one, so the student doesn't have to do a 100-hour internship, which is my preference, because we don't have, some of it's the funding for the student, which isn't necessary, but we also, there's a lot of capacity behind matching a student, placing that student, monitoring that student that we don't have anymore. But if we can identify city departments that need 1 student in the city facilities or the city public health unit, so that's gonna be how I'm going to personally deal with this budget issue, is to try to focus more on the pipeline, because the industries and the departments and, all the companies around us need us just as much as we need them.
Yeah.
But even if there's not a stipend available for the kids, can they still do it?
They can, I'm just saying that I can't overestimate how much legwork goes into making that match. So yes, they can, but the company's gonna want certain things, and the kid, the student needs to do these permission forms, there needs to be an interview process, and then we need to monitor the student, because if they're going on school time, we have to make sure they show up to the site, there's a lot of coordination that happens, so yes. I had one of the city departments call me this morning and say they would take 1 kid, and the city of Providence will pay for that student. So that's easy, but to do that 100 times or 150, that's gonna take 2 or 3 meetings, it's gonna take some coordination, it's gonna take a parent filling out all these forms, that's not something that our team is gonna have the capacity to do at the same level that we've been doing for the last 2 years.
And who goes up to the site? We don't have people that are just designated.
We did. We had 2 ESSER-funded internship coordinators that would go meet with the employer and then, stay. There's a lot of back and forth. And then there's real issues at PCTA. Like, we need to make sure that student, and it didn't happen, but, the student didn't say, well, the school thinks I'm at the internship, and the internship thinks I'm at school, and I'm going to the beach, right? Like that, you have to make sure that we get timesheets and the employers can check them off. It's just, there's a lot, paying them is a lot more work, because there's a whole lot of paperwork and stipends and all that. Unpaid is definitely easier, but still, these are minors and they're on our watch, so there's a lot of prep work that goes into that.
And if it's after hours, a lot of our students, they have to work.
Exactly.
So they have to choose between not working
Exactly.
and going on an internship, that's why the pays is.
Right.
When I was at Mount Pleasant, very many years ago on special assignment, they had a teacher academy, which still exists. And one of the things I found when I was there was that I decided to meet with Rick, and we found out that half the students, some of the students were coming to school during the day, but they were going to the teacher academy after hours. And then many of them weren't doing well. There had not been this person, and we changed it. One of us even we created some systems in place so that I was able to create a schedule so that the teachers who taught those classes were freed up to actually go to Rick and actually, do some of that monitoring, et cetera. So it just brings back to mind having somebody who can just go out to the site and make sure that, not only that they're attending, but that it's a safe space, that the things that the employer said, the internship provider said they were going to do is actually happening. Because a lot of times kids are scared to speak up too, so having somebody that does that is really important. Or maybe having a team, maybe figuring out maybe some folks, is it possible to have folks up here, commit to trying to find some folks who help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's nobody's coming. That's important to give us support. So.
Well, and this building can house interns, right? I mean, if they're coming during the school day, they're not losing
Absolutely.
the potential for wages, right? So Suzanne and I have talked for a couple of years, which is, that someone can be part of the communications team and do some of the website work. And, and when Peter Santos was here, we were close to the Dell kids helping, right? And so, there's been a lot of stop and starts because there's been changes here. But like if you said, I want an intern,
I want an intern.
then now we have an intern, right? Like you can have a graphics intern. And, the good thing about PCTA and 797 is not all the students have to be here all of the time, right? With graphics, you can give an assignment, you can communicate by email or Zoom or walk over and, the student can be in the graphics shop doing the work. And so, it's intimidating to take an intern because you've got to now supervise a teenager who's in your workspace, and I think that's a lot. So when the city department called me, I was like, you could have meetings with the student, but they don't need to report to your work site, because if you have an off-site meeting, you can't just be like, goodbye and leave the teenager alone in your business. So there are opportunities for students from there to do those internships.
Another thing I saw that had a direct positive and measurable impact was that when we had like representatives from Electric Boat in the welding program this year, like that was something unique. And what I saw was so many more kids applied to Electric Boat this year than the previous year, because it still just wasn't something tangible and direct. Whereas like this was a person who works for Electric Boat and is there with them in the booths like once a week, and I just saw that had a significant impact. Not every company has that capacity to do that.
Right.
But
They have the need and the capacity.
exactly, but it made more of an impact than I thought it was going to.
Yeah. The challenge is the schools that don't have your schedule at PCTA, and because the students want to work after hours, how do we make that happen? Right? And, they don't have the day on, day off. We might need to do something creative, especially at Alvarez with healthcare with the senior year, where they can do a day on, day off. They almost have like a school within a school for the 12th grade. Like we're gonna have to think creatively about how to schedule, because I think the hospitals would love to be Electric Boat to Alvarez, right? They have a need, and we have the Rhode Island Nursing Education Center. So, it's pretty easy to do at PCTA, but it is challenging to get kids that real world experience.
Is it going to be possible for the nursing program at Alvarez for those students in the senior year to be in hospitals full time?
That's one of the reasons we're pushing to get the CNA. So the CNA summer program for the last 2 years has not been Alvarez. There have been Alvarez students in it, but Alvarez started the program last year, so their oldest students are rising juniors now. So it was good for us to kind of do a proof of concept and see how it works, so that we could we could embed the CNA into the junior year at Alvarez, and then they would be, if they're of age, they could go out, you could be a CNA at 16. They could go out during their senior year and do that. So that is a possibility. We're not going to place all of the students in a hospital, but they could certainly do that.
Or could they also start a nursing program? Like could they start an RN program?
We are talking to Rhode Island College about at least taking courses between junior, senior, and then 1 or 2 in the first 2, in the senior semester, where they could get out. They can't leave their whole senior year because they need the English and math and to finish the grad requirements. But if Rhinebeck could create a cohort model, Rick could create a cohort model, the students could maybe leave at 10 o'clock and go over to Rick and take, and we've already outlined the courses. One would be a math class, as he said, that's really a barrier for a lot of kids in the pre-nursing program. But they could take their nursing 101 and maybe one other course, and maybe they would have a full semester under their belt at the end of their senior year, or maybe even a year.
And get the dual credit, so they could get a dual science credit, math credit,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, they could they would definitely get the math credit. So that discussion, this is kind of the hot year for Alvarez, because that first cohort is going into the junior year, about 35 students. And I feel like we should do yes and, right? There might be 5 kids that want to go and work as a CNA during their senior year. There there might be 5 kids that wanna go to Rhode Island College, there might be another 10 that wanna, go to Lifespan and explore pharmacology or something, like, it doesn't have to be all, right? So that's the beauty of these partnerships, is we can disperse kids to different places during their senior year.
And I don't want to belabor, but I know my daughter's an anesthesiologist, and one of the things that she does a lot of that training. She was really trying to get them to think about, nursing is just very lucrative right now, especially nurse practitioners, nurse anesthetists, they're making $200,000 a year. So you can have that done in 5 years. You get your undergrad and then go for 12 months or 18 months more and be a nurse anesthetist and come out. And a lot of the folks who are teaching med schools, a lot of times they're nurses. So I just want to make sure it's like, if students, money's not everything, but it is something, right? A lot of our students are thinking, they can think really early and understand the trajectory and then really see that it's not a lot of time. 5 years sounds like it, but it's really not. If they can get the first year while they're in high school, kill 2 birds with one stone, finish up their senior year, and also maybe do a freshman and maybe finishing up their freshman year as they're ending their senior year.
Right.
It just shortens their time and it's less money for them too, because they don't have to pay for the first year, so.
Well, and that's where the financial literacy comes in. It's like, what's the salary versus the debt, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there are studies that show that the nurse practitioner is actually the most lucrative. If you balance out the debt, like, so the doctor's salary might be 300 and the nurse is 200, but the amount of debt, like, over your lifetime, you might think, well, I think there's been studies to show that nurse practitioners might make the most money there. Or PAs too, like, that's another
Physician
field.
assistant.
Yeah.
And really start earning. Because
Yes, how many years of education, residency, whatever, like, all those calculate, somebody way smarter, but like, they need to understand those trade-offs of the extra years that you're not making money versus, the amount of debt that you're taking on, so. Yeah, so we have our work cut out for us, we have a lot of work to do, but I think, and I think one of the greatest challenges is what keeps me up at night are the students that don't get into PCTA, the
Yes.
600 students. So as we develop, biomed is starting to really take off at JSAC and healthcare, and CNA is really taking off at Alvarez, just making sure that all of us around this table assure families that PCTA is not the only seat. It's 11 of our 27 programs.
I say it all the time.
And yeah, everyone does, but so as we peel off the interest at those other schools, that it won't be, that we'll have kids go on to PCTA because they want one of the programs at PCTA.
And I think one of the differences with PCTA, this is when I talk to the community, is that when you go to PCTA, you can see everything. Like, you can see automotive, you can see the beauty salon. Like, when you walk into that salon, it's a salon. It's, anything like the classroom, right? Which is the way you want schools, right? I think as we make the rest of the CTE programs more visibly, people are enamored by what they see.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I wondered is, how are we going to be able to do that with some of the other programs? Because I think that's the PCTA, when you walk in, you know what it is. You can't miss it. It's very visual. It's in your face. And I think that's why people sometimes think, well, that's the real CTE school. Right. And I'm always talking to people in the community and saying, no, there's other programs, but I think we need to make it more visible for them. I don't know how, I know that's expensive.
We're renting,
Yeah.
we're renting Rhinebeck
Yeah.
for 45 days this year. And I think if people come by on those days and see that that's become a satellite classroom for the nursing program and the biomed, that's 45 days. That's a lot of days at that center, yeah. So Alvarez is renting it for 30 days and JSAC for 15. So kids are going to be there with their academic teachers and their CTE teachers. And that's, I think, when they start telling their family members where they're, spending their time. We've also built out, there's a new biomed lab that's going to have a ribbon cutting in September. And then the room at Alvarez, it's like the size of this room, and it has beds and it has curtains and it looks, like a mini room within the classroom. But I think, to your point, if you walk into the pre-engineering lab at Mount Pleasant, your jaw drops. Like, you didn't even know it was down this hallway, and there's this whole robotics setup, and this is where they train the kids to get ready for the robotics competitions. And then you walk into another room, and then there's all these lathe machines and there's real stuff in there, but we don't showcase that enough. And Hope is, Hope has got to show off the art program, so they've got to bring families in, not just the auditorium, but the classroom.
So I'm gonna try to like bridge that gap between like all those things do cost a lot of money. Like something I have no idea how to move the lever on this, but we've talked about it like from time to time about like looking at some other schools like out of state, like in New York and Connecticut, they'll have like the Amgen health program at Hope High School, and like we're talking about that pipeline and these strategic partnerships that other schools in other states have been successful in establishing that. And it's always this idea I have when I'm sitting here, and then as soon as the kids are in the building, like, we never have the time to think about it again. But it might be a way to try to do that. Like, how do we get the infrastructure to be as appealing to the community as do those things?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a government relations, also corporate relations strategy to try to get public and private funding specifically to CTE. And I think the issue is we underfund education. Education is always, sort of like in this weird spot in terms of adequate funding. And when you think about opportunities that will get, certain elected officials, and you're like, oh, workforce development jobs, right? Like that type of pipeline. I think, like, how do you bridge that gap specifically for CTE so we get that funding and open up more spots? I think it definitely goes into educating all the way from like leadership folks, but also like the rank and file folks, because those folks, I mean, and this is something that we should do in terms of like tours of elected officials. I know there's like a couple of people that like come through, but even if every member of the Providence delegation saw PCT, I don't know if that's happened. And just even not like letting them know like, hey, there's most likely a CTE program in your district, and go and go visit that and go see that, right?
Yeah.
And where we can sort of take that. Doesn't feel like a little bit of broken record. That's been like in my head. It's just so hard to like, how do we maneuver that? Like, in the system's good to do that when there's so many different.
I know. And I mean,
and sometimes like there's something that drops, and it's just like, oh no, all attention's over there. Whereas if we had folks to just navigate that space, I am confident, CTE would be a top tier thought piece in a lot of legislators, especially the Providence folks, to just sort of understand like these are jobs, like these are folks getting,
right. But
So,
the other thing I would say, and Jenny Johnson and Maddie Burke at CCRI Workforce Development are two amazing visionary people, right? Like, we have campuses, like I think rural districts have different challenges, right? We are in a city with, that campus right here, it's got a machining shop, it's got space, and they are underutilized all summer. They're underutilized during their vacation. So it's also a mindset, and that's, I think Rhinebeck is a really good lesson in that. Like, they are the premier healthcare training facility for 4 universities in this city. But they also have several weeks when there's no one there, right? So this summer we did the CNA program. There are sim labs wide open. So how do we change this mindset that everything has to happen from 7:30 to 2:30, 180 days a year?
Mhm.
We can have kids do academics and, maybe have that fourth term be the summer where they go, and we have, so instead of investing $750,000 in an advanced manufacturing lab, we have access to that lab, but we are flexible in our thinking that it doesn't have to be between 7:30 and 2:30. And so I'm trying to unlock that. I think that the nights at PCTA are wide open, right? Those are shops that, like, a new staff comes in, we're not asking teachers to stay till 8 o'clock at night, but there is a demand for HVAC, for welding, for all the shops that we have, and we don't open up that building. So, instead of building new facilities, which becomes the focus, what we need is the staff and instructors to come to the facilities that already exist.
That was the original
Design,
design. Open that school.
That's what it was supposed to
And
be.
it was part of the team, so getting it ready.
Yeah.
And that was one of the selling points, so we were gonna open it up in the evening. The community, we were gonna bring staff from other organizations and to teach. One of the ideas too was as students are learning during the day, how powerful would it be for parents?
Absolutely. I've been trying, yeah.
Learn
Sorry,
their certifications as their kids are getting theirs, they're getting those certifications. HVAC is so lucrative. And all of that, plumbing, all of that.
General
Yeah, so
construction.
to me,
Yeah.
instead of
Good money.
Yeah,
facilities, we should think about, but people, I don't know, I mean, I've never been in corporate philanthropy. I think people like to have their names on roofs and buildings, but
They do.
that's not what we need.
Right, that's right.
Right, we need staff, right, like, you
It's an
can't
indirect
just,
way to- right.
yeah, you can't just assume that just because you have a building, like, you need an administrator in the building, and you need, people to teach, they're certified, like, it's a whole thing. But I'd rather, if the corporate philanthropy went through that, than the physical structures that we already have in our city.
And this thing about, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of places around the country where you will see a company sign on a school building. People love that, and then they bring their people, that's advertising for them, and it also sends a message to the community that this big
We're invested.
corporation is investing in the school. People are visual people, right? You know what I'm saying? So people don't, it's not, we're not reinventing the wheel. And then I taught at a year-round school when I was in Los Angeles. I loved it. So this idea of maybe down the road, when you figure out a different way for some of our programs, where you take your last quarter or semester through the end of July.
Right.
When those spaces are open.
Exactly, I mean, they're sitting, it's not even the end of July, it's the middle of May
Yeah.
to Labor Day.
Let's,
That building has so much capacity, so does
A lot
CCRI,
of
it's
capital
literally
in that
the
building.
middle of May, that we could get and that's what we're doing with Brian X, so this is again a proof of concept, but
Yes.
things need to go faster, like you can't have 3 years to lead up to it,
Sure.
like there is capacity. And then there's the instructor issue, and then there's bilingual instructors that are needed. There's a lot of human capital, right? And because industry is in such high demand, it's hard to get people to come out of industry and teach. But there may be people that work at Electric Boat or somewhere in the supply chain or at a hospital, they're willing to do 10 hours a week. They don't want to be a full-time teacher, but they're willing to train kids 10 hours a week after school or do a 4-week summer stint or something if their company releases them, externship kind of thing. So there's a lot. I just think we need to get the flexibility to not try to cram everything into the school day.
I agree. If you look at like how that's affecting, like I realized that this year, like how many students did not get into programs they applied for.
Yeah.
And like looking at, like we were fortunate that we were able to backfill a lot of seats. But I am concerned, like, what does that mean for next year, right? Like we're gonna be saying no to a lot more ninth graders
The
next
more
year.
aware, I mean, we're a victim of our success.
Yes, like,
Yeah.
so like there's like next year has the potential to be like the smallest ninth grade class, because there's not seats. But if we did open things up, to have more flexibility. It's a challenge.
And even our students, the night programs don't have to be just adults. There may be students who,
Oh,
want,
right, yeah, that's
want that,
what I
like,
mean, yeah.
I taught my school.
yeah, I mean, just like in manufacturing, there's 3 shifts. Some people like the night shift because they're, that's when they're at their peak and they sleep during the day, we can think about that, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of data that says our students are more productive in the afternoon and evening than they are
Right.
at 7:30. So
Yeah, I'm not productive, so
no, I work the nights.
I think just like you do.
Yeah.
I'd much rather start at 10.
Yeah.
And I could go all the way through 2 a.m. But I make myself, you've got to be at work, but true. I mean, people are different.
Yeah,
I know a lot of students would appreciate some.
I think people like options.
On fundraising, I know it's been something like I probably said multiple times, and I think we probably brought up this committee. I love just like doing an internal committee, just who needs to be involved. Because to me, it's just a logistical aspect, right? So what are we marketing? How much does that cost? Who are partners, our corporate partners, right? I think it's like sitting down, mapping out, like who needs to be part of that conversation internally, and then because you're already making direct asks all the time in terms of creating partnerships, if we're talking about related to CTE, but it could be broader. The work you're doing, just like, hey, like just in general, different funding opportunities for our whole district. So I'd love to explore that, whether that's, sending those to superintendent, like, hey, look, let's do an internal fundraising committee. It doesn't have to be board related. I think, using this platform to help convene folks and be like, because you have the Brown Foundation opportunity in terms of a pass-through, 501c3 pass-through, so they can be at the table.
Right.
And obviously Dave Cicilline from Providence, like he's there, so maybe they'd be interested in that conversation. But to me, it's just like logistics and time.
I would tag you to be part of that conversation. I think it's important to have a board member.
No, yeah.
I think it's very important to have someone from the board. I know you got a lot on your plate, definitely I think you should be able to.
Yeah, but
You've been bringing this up for many years.
Yeah, and so keep all of us accountable and honest. Like, let's do it this quarter, because I think it's just meeting and just like it doesn't have to be a long-standing thing. It's like an internal. I think it's just like maybe just priority or just this. I don't know who's supposed to be in charge of necessarily like fundraising. I know there used to be
There was,
a job. I think I saw one job description.
grant
Something.
developer, yeah.
A grant developer.
We can have like strategic partnerships. So I know like if I were to go out and talk to Ford and say, hey, and they want to fund something for us, like I can't just set it up, right? It has to be right. It has to be vetted and set up the proper way. But like, what's interesting about this conversation is that like there are so many people out there that are like would be willing to say yes, and there's just no connection, right? So it's like we do have that opportunity for like our kids to get trained by Ford. And what I see happening too about pathways like that is, so we have an automotive program, and our kids are going to graduate and they should earn their ASE certification. That gets them in the door. But it doesn't initially show them is that like you get your ASE certification, you can work in a shop, but if you like then specialize in other aspects of it that you like aircraft mechanics, right? Like if there was a way for them to have more exposure to that, like, and they can see that like you're talking about starting pay is like triple if you're working on an airplane engine versus the engine. So my contacts who work in the specialized field say the same thing. So somebody decided to take them one day and say, do you want to work on this dirty truck, or do you want to work on this airplane that looks like it's brand new? And again, like there are people out there doing it, and a lot of them are very willing to get connected to kids, but they're not educators, right? So like they're completely happy to convince them, yes, it can't be something where they're going to do 5 nights a week, but there's still a capacity there. So I like the idea of like how we're thinking about that. It's like, what can we do to explore the opportunity of those relationships?
I went on tour of East Providence High School this summer. They had in their automotive department the cars that were donated by our local dealerships for the kids to work on. And it says the dealership name donated by, and they teach the kids, and then the dealership hires the kids. I was like,
Yep.
Yeah. And each tech is gonna have that pipeline to within who's gonna hire them when they get out.
Right. We are offered, like you said, like the building is beautiful. It's right there, right? You can the amount of visibility that goes into like offering some of those partnerships and some it's attractive.
I think if it's bigger than this, right, then I think there's two sort of things that need to happen. One is there needs to be sort of a generic fund, right? So if Citizen says, I want to invest in workforce development, but I don't really know what, right? They give $100,000. And then there's a committee that like you write a micro grant. So Brian makes a connection and he's got a guy who's willing to come and train 12 students to do such and such a thing. He needs a micro grant of 30,000. He writes, like he goes in front of this board and says, "This is what I need money. Here's the check," without a whole lot of like hassle. And then there's like within that or under that umbrella in fundraising, there's the ability for someone to say, I want to make a donation for this purpose, and you'll do this for me. And then it's kind of on that committee to say, okay, that's an arts thing. we really should call Nicole and bring her in. Oh, that's a workforce development, we'll bring Brett in, but it could be, it's, something that is totally unrelated to CTE. There's just an opportunity that someone wants to fund, right? So we need, I think the broader it starts, if it becomes a CTE thing, it becomes a CTE thing. I think if it's more of like, here's the nonprofit arm, and we're gonna go out, we're gonna sell it, and you understand that you can make a donation and then be part of deciding who gets it. But I think there's so much talent and energy in our district, and people can just say, hey, raise my hand, I've got an idea for a micro grant, I wanna do a barbering program after school, I need 30 grand to do it, and here's your 30 grand.
Yeah, so after the meeting, I'm gonna email superintendent and CC.
That'd be great, I think that's the best action step we could take.
Do we have,
I
do
think
our
I like
seniors
safety part.
have to do like
It's
capstone
exciting.
projects?
Yep.
Do
What's
our
that?
seniors have to do like capstone projects?
Yeah, but there's like the performance based, so we have like
Diploma
EVA,
assessment,
so like they have
Like-
to do.
Can some seniors, can it be pitched to some of our seniors for like this coming year for like capstone projects to be like to highlight each tag? Like for them to go in, do video recordings, like make a little video, minute long, and like highlight each tag that
Yeah.
we can then use for marketing purposes.
And that dovetails perfectly with like our graphics and like video production and the script writing and all the story.
As long as it's district.
Yeah,
Not
actually,
just
that would be a
Well,
good
CTA.
project for everyone.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
might actually be an interesting thing. Like, so I was just thinking, of course, like my graphics guys, but it'd be great to get those students out in, because like it's funny, we're like,
Those are the schools that.
we're so insulated,
Yeah.
so, but it would be great to get my students out into the other tech program and see what's out there. Yeah, right, so to do that.
But even at the schools themselves, I know when I was at Mount, my first principalship, when at home, we opened up that, there was a whole old edit bay, it was just all junk, and we opened it up and we got some kids interested in film and video. And they videotaped all of the work that was happening there, and they just had a little camera. But even if they don't have a graphics department, every high school has kids who are
Oh,
interested in photography, they can do
Yeah,
their
we got it
own.
right there and then
Yeah.
talk
Put
to
it
you.
together.
I mean, how many,
Yeah,
you've seen like,
yeah.
how many kids like made movies with their phones? That's
Absolutely.
right.
What I
So-
really would like is if we got a grad school team. And apparently, I went down and met with HR today, and there's a possibility of posting like an unpaid internship that someone might apply to. I mean, it's a long shot, but like, why not? Put it out there, like grad students need
But
to
you
do
have
a
college
project.
students that need to do these.
What I'd
things as
really
well.
like to
Right.
do is go around to the 5-year out CTE students.
Yeah.
One's at Electric Boat, one's at Fidelity, one's here. I was in this program and now I'm here. And, like that, we just got our first student at Johnson Controls from the class of 24. Follow him around for a few minutes and have, because I think corporations would respond to that. Like that is the impact, right? We can say we have this, we have all these certs, and we have all these kids completing whatever. That doesn't mean anything until they see someone 5 years out, who's now a project manager on Gilbane's site or something. Like
That
that's
data would be
powerful.
so great, because I said like words talk and math screams, like it would be great to see that.
Yeah.
Don't we
How-
get college interns?
I haven't had one. I don't know.
I do, I'm trying to get one now from Brown, but they're.
Put in for two.
What?
Put in for two. I mean, like some of this is the legwork, but it wouldn't, like I could reach out to our employer partners and say, do you have any PTSD grads? And then I get 5 emails back and I don't have time to go and do anything about it, right? So it's not so much data mining as it is somebody, like if there was a film
That's their focus.
group from URI or wherever, they have to make a documentary about our student success. I think that would speak to corporations. I really do. Like, I think that we're underestimating how many of our graduates are out there making an impact in industries. We just don't trace them.
Yeah,
And I think that would make someone go,
yeah.
If you want me to, I'll reach out to somebody at Brown and see if there's.
yeah,
I
right?
bet you can, because it's a short-term thing,
Yeah,
it's not forever, it's like.
right,
it's
they
time to
must
decide.
have a film
You
study.
get the product and then.
Yeah, there's also several marketing companies like in Providence that do exactly that.
Yeah,
Right,
we
you
need
know,
a
so,
pro
like, it'd be
bono,
great.
like,
Right, we can talk about how.
the thing I like about students is, they'd be they're bold,
Oh,
they'd be
yeah.
willing to call up the kid and say, can I come to your company? Can can I
Right.
film you outside, can I walk, whatever, but.
Yeah, no, I envision it as like them working with our students, like that.
Oh,
Like that.
right,
It is like an
right.
internship
That
working
would
with,
be
like they just know how to do it,
They
you
know
know,
how to
as
do
we
it.
gotta figure
Yeah.
out as we go. But
Yeah.
You wanna get together and talk?
I do, yeah, like I'm super excited about that. I also say yes to everything, and then I just feel that's what I pull my hair out.
I'll
It's,
email
The high school
Great.
kids can do it, but the high school kids, it's hard, right? Like, then you need a permission slip and someone has to accompany them during the day, like, it just becomes logistically really hard. But a grad student group or someone, we all have different contexts, and sometimes people just say, how can I help? They might be at the end of their career, and they just wanna get back, so, we just we don't know who's out there, but I think part of what this is about, even fundraising, is having a list of in-kind things that we, so like, I don't have money to get, you either give time or treasure, right? Like, if you
Yeah.
don't have treasure, you give time, and if someone's saying, I just retired and, I wanna get back to the community and they've done documentaries all their life, like, well, we got an assignment for you. Or, they've done print marketing, or we've got an assignment for you. I think that's part of it. And again, it's not just CTE, it's just thinking creatively as a district, that there's a place that someone who says that can go and find out. So in-kind is just as valuable to me as money,
Yeah,
even more.
yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's a mapping out sort of project, logistics, who in PTSD can own certain aspects and sort of just like execute. But I think as soon as you have a clear pathway for corporations to invest
Yes.
dollars and also the branding materials associated with that.
Yeah.
Once you like identify like, hey, for the automotive shop PCTA, like there's a price tag in terms of like naming it or donating it, or so like, this would be for us to like sort of like think about and put that there and then reach out to corporations. Also, this is also something that's conversations like this. I feel like it's more like an internal logistical stuff than like a political policy thing. But like, yeah. So I think again, like I said, after the meeting, I'm gonna use my phone, and hopefully get just.
We do have our first corporate sponsorship from Electric Code, and there will be banners going up at the ball fields, tennis courts, and lobbies. It's small, but it's a template, right? Like, for this amount of money, this is what you can get. And I think for Electric Code, it's giving back. They want to make sure it's not just the kids in the welding shop or parents at the baseball game who are like, you can walk over to these new banners and just put the QR code and then learn about career opportunities. So it's, it's not just the traditional food companies or drink company, it's companies that want to hire and just know that they're willing to give money to have visibility for our kids. So.
Right. As we think about that, we think about electric boat, we think, well, in some ways like this big part, but if you look at all the companies that manufacture components and provide services that go into that process, like there's so much
Endless,
other opportunities. Electric boat's the big one, so they can afford a person to say, go out there and see what they need, right? But a lot of the smaller companies, they don't have that same capacity, so how do we tap into those resources?
Yeah.
Awesome, I love it. I think
So-
that's our action.
Here we go.
That's our action.
I want to be mindful in terms of keeping that in an hour, but the other one is more of just logistical thing. In student survey we could talk offline, but we have the stakeholder survey. I think kind of just us looking at it again, sending it out. I'd love to do like a report out before like December, not knowing where the board's going to be next year, but having some sort of. Obviously, you're going to be here, for the next iteration, but just some potential transitionary aspects, foundation for folks to, and I'll still be here in terms of helping whoever's next or whatever the next board iteration is. But I think that stakeholder survey, I'm thinking in board terms, but also I think just helpful in terms of maybe we put a question to the stakeholder survey, how can you help, right? Like, right, in terms of that logistical mapping. So.
So you and I could get 3 surveys together quickly, right? Community, staff and administrators in CTE, and then students, right?
Yeah.
And then, Survey Monkey or Google Forms, we can get data back.
Do we need to add someone from like comms in terms of, for that
We
conversation?
definitely wanna run it by them. They
Okay,
wanna
let's do
say,
that.
but I think that we could get it out and through the teachers, we could get it done. And I would just, we wanna think, I think comms could help us make sure that like when we, slice and dice the data, that we line it up properly so that we can say, this is the 9th grade, this is the 10th grade, this is the 11th, 12th, this is the community, but line up kind of the major topics of.
So if you have time after Labor Day, the first 2 weeks, if we could set up a
Yeah.
meeting with comms and
Suzanne,
go,
yeah, or
Suzanne,
Yeah, I think that would be.
do that. Any other comments in terms of today's meeting? I think it was a really productive meeting in terms of talking about, so I think 2 takeaways is internal fundraising committee I'm gonna ask right after this meeting, and then second, we'll connect in terms of releasing a survey.
And I'll see what I can find out for some college, some free support.
Okay.
I'll see what I can find.
That would be
I'll get
amazing.
information to you.
Yeah,
I know a couple of folks, I'm looking that might be willing to, just a finite time, you don't need it forever, just, this is a job. So,
As far as connecting kids to like internships, has anyone discussed what the Met does? Because it's literally all they do.
doing well.
I feel like I always
That
feel
might
like
be
I always
another
talk
meeting.
about it too much. You know,
Oh, Ryan's
it's
from
like-
the Met.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I was in the Met for
Okay.
10 years and purposely trying to not just say what the Met is. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges that we're talking about that they have figured out ways to do very well. They also have certain degrees of flexibility that we don't. But when I was an advisor there, that was like my role. Like I was a classroom teacher, but then 2 days a week, it was also my job to procure opportunities for my students in whatever they did. So I had students that were pilots, I had students that were mechanics, I had students that were studying infectious diseases in the Brown lab, like we did.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my daughter graduated from that.
right, so
So
it's,
they
so that,
found her the perfect internship for her.
yeah, and that's the power of it. But what happens with that is that it's the same thing we're talking about here. It's like there's opportunities outside for us to get $1 million to fund this program, but who has the opportunity, time, and resources to do that? And at the Met, like they create that for the advisors to do. So it's
So
like,
it's the advisors that then go and look for.
yeah, and there are some like strategic partners. Like there are some people who will manage some of the larger things, like Lifespan, right? So we don't want 100 teachers calling Lifespan and saying, "Hey, can you give my kid a shadow day here?" So there are some that are organized, but for the most part, it's all the small relationships. That's why I mentioned some of the smaller companies that are out there. Like you find people who are like, "Yeah, somebody took an interest in me, and that's why I ended up here." And it can be grown organically that way too. So there's a lot of ways to make some of this work, create more opportunities for our kids.
And I'm glad you said, I was glad you volunteered this, Kim, because I think we need to embrace some of the things that other schools that are not typical public schools are doing. And something that he said that is so important is there's some flexibility, which goes back to something you said earlier around how we schedule students. We can kind of let go a little bit, because to be able to do some of this stuff, you can't have a 6-period day, rah, 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 rah.
No.
That's-
180
never
days,
gonna
these are the
happen.
days, yeah.
No, so I mean, that's something, the best example I always come into is when I was met my students who were interested in culinary arts or cosmetology, like that's great, but very few places for them are open during the school day anyway. So like their school day started when the business opened at 4:00, and now their internship is at night. And you have to have some degree of
I
flexibility.
had several internships from them.
Yeah, it's cool.
let me say on that, it goes to the finance, CTE, Met in business and entrepreneurship, for the entrepreneurial pitch competition that we do, that my small nonprofit might run in partnership with the Governor's Office. Met kills it.
Yeah, that's something they.
Kills it.
Well, it was very frustrating last year. Like, so we were talking about the food truck. We were figuring out, should we have this food truck? Like, what do we do with this food truck? How do we manage this food truck? What do we do? And the student at the Met who won the state, national, and then, like she actually, she won, and she went beyond that. It was how to run a food truck business incubator, and it was like, great, it's like a mile away, and we're racking our brains over it. So like, I love exploring some of those partnerships, and again, like, if there's somebody who's doing it better than you, like, learn from them.
I go.
Yeah, yes, isn't that great, right?
Second, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Abstention, motion passes. Thank you to everyone who watched this film.
This is the
Sending me,
funnest meeting I've had in a while. Love this. I think I shall return.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yes.
That's when you mentioned something about like getting like more people into CTE, and I like it's been one of my pet projects. I haven't